Dan Charles, great conversation with Dan. We start the conversation off with Arnold Schwarzenegger, by the way. I wonder why. I would ask about that. But it's a great conversation. Dan started in the music business and studios and production and now has moved to events completely. It's a wonderful insight on making that transition. I love talking about music and just what do casual listeners, what do they need to understand of what happens in that studio? Now his firm helps with these big music events. When marketing is a pure marketer at this point, but his transition to get there is very, very interesting through fatherhood, through mountain biking, through model painting, through meditation. Just a really, really great insight on marketing with Dan. He's there in Reading, about 30 miles from London. But really, really appreciate his time. Thank you, Dan, and thank you for watching and listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because I was working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Dan Charles, thanks for your time today. What does Arnold Schwarzenegger mean to you?
Long-term role model of mine ever since I was a little kid, watching Terminator 2 before I was allowed to, really, at 11, 12 years old. I always felt like he has been a great character throughout kind of my life. The things that he's achieved have just been absolutely incredible when you think about it. And I love his attitude of believing that you can always be better, not from necessarily a critical point of view, but from a point of growth is an amazing opportunity that all humans have. And his attitude towards that has always been very inspiring for me. So, for 40 odd years now, I suppose, 30 years, I suppose, not that young.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza Dash MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. Yeah, it's interesting to have that as a role model. So it was first as probably Terminator.
Yeah, it was Terminator 2 when I was 11 years old. So it was a 15. I wasn't meant to be watching it, but my dad was kind of cool like that. And and I watched that and I was completely like, this is incredible. He's amazing. Like, loved the movies, obviously, as an 11-year-old boy, who wouldn't sort of thing. But followed him ever since and just been really inspired by his kind of approach to life and things.
Amazing transformation from Western Europe and then, Eastern Europe, and then comes to the States and becomes, world champion, becomes governor of California. I mean, becomes the biggest actor in the world. It is quite a story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the cool thing about it is that he said he was going to do all those things,
right?
And everyone said he wasn't going to do it. They're like, don't be ridiculous. No one wants someone like you in movies, And then he became the Terminator, which is undoubtedly one of the most iconic movie characters of all time. You say the Terminator to anyone, they picture Arnold, leather jacket, sunglasses. It's iconic. And then going on to obviously with the weight training, the Mr. Olympia, I think it was 7 times in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, and then governor, and it's like he said he was going to do all those things, and no one believed him, and he did it anyway.
Then how did you go from music production to events marketing?
Yeah, so ever since I was a little kid, I loved music. My dad was a rocker. He used to play Elvis, Creedence, Clearwater Revival, all those
Huh.
types of things. And I always used to wonder how music was even made when I was a kid. I just heard a band playing, and I'm like, how are they even doing that? The melodies, the drums, rhythms, and everything. So as I got older, I kind of got into sort of computer music, audio engineering, those types of things. Electronic music in particular. And I learned a lot, and I still make music today. And
Hmm.
I from that path, it kind of led me to working with a record distribution company who had a studio and digital distribution, vinyl distribution, and so forth. And so I worked in the studio there and started building up more of a passion for that type of thing. And there was loads of great bands and artists coming through the studio all the time,
Wow.
and I'm like, these guys are incredible. They just, no one knows who they are
Huh.
at all, sort of thing. And I started wanting to kind of put on like little events and things like that, just very local things like small 50, 60 capacity kind of things for free entry and all that, doing it for a bit of beer money and stuff. But
Nice.
the idea was to kind of showcase some of these people, some of these artists and things. And then that kind of got quite popular. And from there, I kind of started scaling up the events as a bit of cash came in, and to the point where I was then running events which had up to 3,000 attendees. And yeah, we were booking some of the biggest known acts of the time, in the scene. And I got to play a lot, which
Hmm.
is good. I got to be on the stage. I got to do my thing. I got to be
Wow.
completely involved in that. But that's kind of where I really got into the industry and really started seeing a lot of the B2B side, because there were so many vendors and, people for the logistics side of things, like security, venue owners, um, agencies, bookers, promoters, all the different kind of people who make the whole event happen. I got to know them very well, and that's kind of where it transitioned into what I'm doing now.
What should the casual listener of music know about what it's like being in the studio? The stress level, the complication, the collaboration. What should they know?
So I would say one thing is really paramount over everything else is you have to if you're working, so say if you're a band and you're working with an audio engineer, you might just be like, oh, it needs to be X, Y, and Z specific kind of sound for this kind of drum and things like that, right? But it's really important just not let your ego get in the way and
Mm.
listen to the producer, listen to the engineer, listen to the recording engineers, all those types of people as well, because they know, for example, how things will transfer for the sound that you want, for example, to transfer to an audience.
Hmm.
And so I see a lot of the time there's a lot of kind of creative ego kind of gets in the way a little bit too much sometimes, when ultimately everyone wants the best.
Mm.
And so it has to be kind of like allowing yourself to be humbled and listening to the advice and input from other people. And if you just think you are, perfect in every single way and nothing needs to change, then you will struggle in that industry. And I think that's where a lot of the stress can come from, is when heads butt together in those creative environments. And then ultimately what happens is nothing really great comes out of it a lot of the time, And so I feel like that's one thing people could always pay a lot more attention to, is just kind of be more collaborative, take the feedback on the chin, and understand that everyone's here trying to get better.
Hmm. Yeah, because egos get in the way. Even artists, great artists, have egos, and you always hear clashes.
Mm.
Rumors of clashes that happen in the studio with the biggest bands, with Fleetwood Mac or the Rolling
Yeah.
Stones, or although you really don't hear about it with the Beatles very much, and we've seen hours and hours of video about that. Kind of George Martin was kind of the father figure there, it would
Mm.
seem, and
Mm.
sure they'd get in a couple. You saw a couple of things of John yelling at Paul and things like that, but nothing. I don't know. Maybe we don't know, do we?
Yeah, true. And you definitely hear about those kind of stories over time. And ironically, some of the most incredible music was made under those situations as well. But then some of the most incredible music was made through pure collaboration.
Right.
Like, for example, Elvis Presley, he was always renowned for, even if a band member fluffed a key or a note or a chord on the guitar, Elvis would be like, "Oh, sorry guys, that's my bad. Sorry, I messed up there. Let's take it from the top."
Huh.
And he would always take that as it, you know what I mean? He would always take the pressure off everyone else and put it on himself, as if I messed up, I didn't do the delivery right. And Michael Jackson was very like that as well. He was very, very much about like, I'm the one who is accountable for all this. And yes, I mean, he was a creative genius, obviously, as we know, but he was still very calming to the people who work with him all the time. When you see it when he's on stage and everything, he was just very much bringing everyone into the frame, realizing everyone had value and respected that and believed that great things can be made when people collaborate like that.
I heard this story recently, Dan, about a Prince story where they were on stage, and at one point the person handed Prince a guitar during a certain area, and it wasn't tuned correctly. So it was, that would be the last act this person made. And so Prince just kind of strummed it, saw it wasn't, live on stage, and then proceeded to play leads on each string as he was tuning them.
Yeah.
So this is from a band member, the New Power Generation at the time, and he was describing it. He said it was one of the most magical nights he's ever been a part of, because he turned that into theatrics. Now, here you have somebody who at 16 or 17, these record companies said, we're going to have a producer. He says, no, I'm going to produce my own stuff at 16. And I mean, obviously he's the great example that's different, but maybe that's all what's right about music. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the kind of dichotomy of it. I mean, Prince was just incredible in so many ways. I mean, he could play so many different instruments, and his deal, like you said, was very much like, no, I'm going to produce the albums.
That's right.
And that's that. If you want to work with me, that's how it's going to work, And, some could say definitely that was the ego piece coming through. But again, it's kind of going back to that Arnold thing as well, is sometimes if you just know with absolute certainty that something needs to go in a specific way, and you're ready to kind of put your entire kind of credibility and reputation on the line for that, then sometimes as well is, again, the collaborative part is to step out of the way and just get out of the way of that and let that magic happen as well,
Yeah.
So
you would see these live performances of Prince, and all the band members are staring at him, and he's kind of giving them looks, and he's giving them clear instructions by just his gesture and by what he's saying, and they're just following along, and it's so obvious that he's in complete charge of everything that happens, and the band is just right there. It's incredible. I also remember hearing a story about Miles Davis, where Herbie Hancock messed up on one of his chords, just completely messed up. So Miles compensated and made his error correct. So he changed his to make, okay, it wasn't a mistake. Now I've adapted to it. It's just amazing what we see and what happens with these just brilliant, brilliant geniuses.
Yeah, so true. You kind of hear about that quite a lot through different kind of eras and things like that, where it's just, they've kind of had not just 10,000 hours of playing the guitar, it's like decades and decades and decades
sleeping with it.
Play.
Yeah,
exactly that.
Hendrix would sleep with his guitar.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hendrix is a great example of that. He just kind of he embodied the guitar almost, and it's kind of like, that's why his tracks could get away with a 3-minute guitar kind of solo breakdown with all this, without any lyrics, without any hooks or kind of choruses going. He could just roll with just some drums and a guitar for like 3-4 minutes, and people would love it. And it's because, he just had that kind of innate skill within him, and the people around him kind of let that come out as well, and yeah, I would have loved to have been in that era. I'd love to see him live. I tell you,
amazing. Yeah, I remember seeing an interview once with Slash, the guitarist, Guns N' Roses, and he would say during tours he would sleep with his guitar because he was afraid that when he woke up he'd forget how to play. He's a real fear of his. I'm afraid. So I'd get up in the middle of the night and just play a couple chords. Like, okay, I remember, and put it next to me. It's just amazing what happens. And going along, I remember another story, just about the creative geniuses here. Bob Dylan created and sang, performed all along the Watchtower, and within a couple of weeks, it was in London, I believe, he saw Jimi Hendrix perform all along the Watchtower just a couple weeks after he released it. And Bob Dylan said, that's the way the song should have been played. And he never performed it again. Wow. So these artists feel that it comes to them, but it might not necessarily be theirs. Isn't that incredible? Gives me chills.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't realize he said that about it. I mean, I knew he wrote the song and things, and I've only ever really genuinely listened to the Jimi Hendrix version,
right?
And everyone kind of remembers that. But yeah,
there must be some way out of here.
Yeah, for him to kind of say no, that just channeled through Jimi Hendrix, and
that's right. It's not
whenever
mine.
You say that song, people think Jimi Hendrix for it, and he didn't even write the song.
I remember another. I know we're dwelling on this, but it fascinates me. Bono and Edge wrote a song called "She Is a Mystery to Me," and truly believed it wasn't theirs. And so they believed it was Roy Orbison's. And so they went to a Roy Orbison concert and met him, showed him the song afterwards. And it was the very last song Roy Orbison ever recorded in a studio. Right. And it's written by U2. But again, they just never felt it was theirs. They wouldn't perform it, but it was just in his voice. It's a beautiful song. I encourage you to listen to it. But there's another story. It's amazing, the industry of music and these geniuses and what happens there.
Yeah, it's truly incredible how the music comes together. I mean, looking at the Beatles, for example, when they were recording their music back in the day, they used to they used to take kind of drugs and things like that. We kind of know that era, 60s era and things, but that led to a lot of experimentation and stuff as well. And one of the things was like, Strawberry Fields, for example, there's a bit in that where the music's going backwards. And nowadays, right, you can literally anything, like any audio workstation, you can do a reverse in split seconds, and you can apply a million effects to it. But that was kind of one of the first times that had actually been heard in a track before, was them actually playing the tape backwards and going, wow, that sounds pretty cool. Let's play that backwards for this kind of middle eight section, and it's that experimentation. And I'll be completely honest, I feel like a lot of that kind of experimentation stuff is a little bit lost these days. I might just be showing my age a little bit here. I'm 44.
Right.
But I listen to a lot of the popular music, and it follows a very specific formula. It has very clear hooks. It's designed to be under 3 minutes, designed to kind of catch on the ear and stuff like that. But it doesn't stick around like those tracks from like 20, 30, 40 years ago. It just doesn't stick around in the same way. And I feel like a lot of that kind of that experimentation is not there anymore. There is absolutely people doing that kind of stuff, but it's not what gets the mainstream attention. And like hearing the Beatles on the radio back in the day, that was kind of groundbreaking music, and that would have been in, they had like tons of platinum releases and things. Whereas hearing something like that nowadays, experimental stuff like that, I don't think it would fly on streaming platforms and stuff.
And the technology was so limited. I think in my life, George Martin played the piano very slowly, but then he sped it up for the release. So just to kind of think of these things, and you had to put things backwards. I remember Ringo was saying at one point that the new 4-track device they had didn't even have a power cord. They had to like go buy so the way they adapted and the way he kept records too, George Martin, he's like, these Rickenbackers on this, and it's all written on paper. It's very, very cool. So how do you go from that, Dan, from the magic of music and the wonderment and the artistic there to events where, you're working with promoters, and I've heard you talk about sometimes, the scruples aren't completely there, and, it's a very kind of different industry, but it is melded because you are still dealing with artists. How do you make that transformation?
Yeah, so that was definitely one of the challenges I found. Was I wanted to put on every event we did from the heart, just booking those kind of amazing kind of unknown underground artists and stuff who no one had really heard of. And I'd be like, wow, this is so incredible. This is amazing music. It's really, really got so much more depth and kind of, such a vibe to it and things like that. But it wasn't necessarily what was popping in the mainstream, even in the club or dance music scene or anything like that. And so I just got humbled so many times running events where I book these smaller artists and just lose money every single time.
Wow.
It was, it was quite painful at times, kind of like chewing glass when you knew you'd put on an amazing night and then you lost like 10 grand.
But
like,
there was people there. Like what are the metrics there? Did not people show up? What?
Yeah, so it's just, I mean, when you're doing kind of events like that, it's definitely a popularity contest. You know, who's going, who's not going, what, where, and why. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't willing to take a gamble on a ticket to go and see an act which they've never heard of before.
Right.
So we had to build ourselves up as a brand that could be trusted to bring the good music in. And the only way we could actually do that initially was by hiring and booking the big popular names that people knew of and heard of. So you'd say a name and they'd be, oh, I know who that is. And then what we would do is very strategically put our favorite underground artists who no one had heard of before, right before the main act, and then right after the main act, we'd have people. So they would get maximum eyeballs and earballs. Yeah. But they'd get maximum kind of reach exposure at that event sort of thing. But we knew that most people weren't even there for them. Right. But the great thing was that over time, over years of doing that, we then got our fans and people who come regularly going like, you know what? I came for such and such, but the guy you had on before them was incredible. And that's the thing where they then started really trusting us a lot more for that. And so we just decided to lead a lot more with why we put these people on. And we never used to talk about the main acts. And some of the agents and stuff who we used to book through, they'd be like, no, you need to be talking more about your main act for the night. And we're like, well, everyone knows them. Like, you know what I mean? We're not being completely blunt. We're not booking them to, that we don't really care about the main act, right? We're booking them because it's going to get the people in the door to see all the other acts and people on the night, sort of thing. So we actually got told off quite a lot by agents and stuff for not shouting about the big headliner as much as we could, sort of thing. But screw it. It was our money. We do what we want. Right?
That's right. And the big headliners, they sell themselves, right? The name is there. The model. I'm a little bit older than you, Dan. And the model, when I was a kid, we would go to concerts for $10, for $15, right? Because they would promote. I saw so many concerts, and the bands would promote their album because they made their money through the album. So the concerts were really cheap. I saw so many acts, Jay Giles, and oh my goodness, Madonna, and the Kinks, and all these bands, absolutely incredible for nothing. But now the model is completely changed because they give away the music, and the concerts cost the money. So it has completely switched. So it's a little bit more difficult now to get people to go to events because generally they're more expensive, right? How's that model changed?
Yeah, you're completely right there. It's completely flipped on its head, and the events are very expensive these days for a good any kind of event. I mean, the ones I've been to recently, they're £50-60 for a good kind of like even just a kind of a dance night with DJs and stuff like that. And then you've got kind of bands and stuff like that as well. Like, I mean, Fleetwood Mac, I think their last tour they were £235 a ticket.
Amazing.
Which is quite a lot of money, right?
Yes.
But then they still sold out. The demand was still there. And they sold out at that price. So
Taylor Swift was $1 billion tour.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And then they absolutely clean up on merch. I mean, I've got a friend who does a lot of merch and design work for these big bands, and they absolutely clean up on them.
Do they really?
Yeah, they really do. The big ones. Yeah, they make huge amounts of cash on that.
Wow.
And it's quite crazy to sort of see. But like you said, the music is distributed for free now. I can just jump on my phone. Go, I've heard of that. I saw a clip on that and just listen to it. I mean, brand new album comes out, I'm just listening to it straight away. And I feel like that's almost like the kind of the gateway drug now. It's
It
just having the
is.
album on Spotify for free, you know?
U2, one of my favorite bands, their new EP dropped yesterday. 6 songs, new EP. I listened to all 6 within minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I put the earbuds in, and when I was a kid, I had to go to the record store. I had to buy the album. I had to put it, you know, it's just very, I'm not saying it's good or better. It's just different. And, you know, we have to adapt to it. So how do you, fundamentally now, you've turned completely into a marketer, Dan, correct?
Yep. That's correct. Yeah.
With your firm. So how do you make that adjustment now from music, from being in studios to events to actually marketing for events now?
Yeah. So one thing I knew when I was running the events was, like I said, you get one date to make or break. Basically, that's a lot of the time, or you might have several dates. It depends on what you're kind of doing, but a lot of the time it was like one event could make or break your business.
Amazing.
And like I said, I've had it where I've lost, you know, thousands of pounds on a single night sort of thing. And so I really had to get good at marketing to make sure that we could get those events filled. And so what I found was I was getting better and better and better at marketing, and, you know, the tickets, revenue, profitability, all those types of things started improving quite a lot. That's why we were able to scale from those small 60-person events up to 3,000 plus.
Wow.
And it was around that kind of time where I was kind of doing those much larger events, and I had my first daughter on the way, and I was like, well, she's coming along soon. I can't really be staying up 3-4 nights a week until 5-6 o'clock in the morning anymore. A, it was kind of burning me out a bit anyway.
It is a late night.
Yeah. And B, my wife is getting more and more and more pregnant. I'm like, oh, I can't just be out all the time, you know. And so I knew that I was good at marketing, and I just kind of basically started pitching to anyone, anywhere. Hey, do you want a website? Do you want this or that? You know, friends, family, all of that type of stuff. And I got a job at a big kind of corporate agency, which was just, you know, it was terrible. It was, you know, I learned a lot from working there, but it was awful burnout territory. It was just not fun at all. And so then I went freelance from there and just worked freelance for a good several years, and then started my firm and decided that the best thing to do would be work with the industry I know the best, which is the events industry. And since I did that, it resonated a lot more, you know, because I actually genuinely understand our clients' pain points and problems and things. You know, I've been there myself, and I'm like, I understand exactly where you're coming from with this. So it was kind of one of them, not them and I, you know.
So when you say clients, do you mean the bands or do you mean the ticket buyers?
So we tend to work a bit more on the business to business side now. So I tend to work a lot more with event companies who are putting on the events. I see. So we don't necessarily work on the ticket selling side, although that can be part of what they do. So we help them a lot more with kind of like sales, acquisition, marketing, all those types of things, and kind of building in automation into their business and so forth. And often there's kind of like registration, you know, there's ticket vending, there's all those types of things which are part of their events, which we kind of help with on that side of things as well.
Dan, what's the difference between marketing and sales?
Not much. If you do amazing at marketing, you don't need sales so much, you know.
Interesting.
So I would say sales is just an extension of marketing, and that's not to belittle sales. Sales is 100% important and needed, yes. and it is critical. But I have personally worked on both sides of things. You know, I've taken thousands of sales calls myself, and I've worked for decades in marketing. And what I do know is that if you have amazing marketing, the sales conversations go very, very easily, and your revenue, profit, and everything increases exponentially from that. You know, so yeah, that's kind of really how I sort of envision it. Is they work together, and a lot of people think they're different entities, but you know, one point on the sales side as well, though, if you're selling to the wrong people, it makes marketing harder, you know. So marketing can make sales easier, but then if you sell the wrong people, or you pressure close people into buying something that they don't want, long term, the repercussions are that your brand and credibility and reputation go down, and then it makes your marketing significantly harder. So that's kind of how I've always seen it anyway.
What if discipline wasn't about punishment, but about unlocking your best self? I spent 2.5 years writing Discipline for Greatness because discipline changed my life. And I know it can change yours too. This isn't theory. Inside, you'll find real, practical steps you can use immediately to focus better, build stronger habits, reduce stress, accomplish your goals, and bring more balance to your life. Whether you're trying to get healthier, improve your career, or simply feel more control, this book gives you the framework. Start today. Grab your copy of Discipline for Greatness at joeypinz.com/book. Thank you. You know, I work with a lot of small businesses, Dan, and sometimes sales has got a, bad kind of used car salesman kind of, I don't want to be sold to. I don't want to be marketed to. I hear, people say this a lot and really have to kind of shift out of that a bit because how else are you going to grow unless you sell?
Yeah.
But if you do it right, if you make it, if you really, has AI helped you in marketing in this area?
Absolutely. So without being a buzzword, I believe we are very much an AI first agency at this point. It's quite heavily integrated into a lot of the systems and processes that we do. And it's significantly improving the efficiency of how we deliver. I don't feel like it's going to replace us yet. It might do in the future, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I see it as a kind of a force multiplier where for every person you have working within the company, they could be working with several AI agents and be like 10x more productive with their time, which is what we're seeing, here already. And that argument of AI can do everything for everyone all at once is just BS, because what we do for our clients is just unfathomable to them, because they're maybe using AI and all these things for all the kind of things within their business. So for them to then expect to build all this infrastructure for sales and marketing and running ads and content production, all those types of things as well, it's just not going to happen. They're going to get more and more efficient in their specialization, and we're going to get more and more efficient in ours, basically. So it's been quite scary, I think, sometimes the rate of change I've seen since it came out. It's just, but my goal is really to just stay on top of it and just adapt to it and really be one of the, companies that uses it to their advantage rather than kind of let it be the thing that destroys them.
Are the numbers up on concert going and event going? I'm just guessing. I would think here in the States they're up. How about there, UK and Ireland?
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, events industry is growing massively. I mean, it's something like $850 billion globally, I think, at the moment for the events industry. And by 2035, it's set to be about 1.45 trillion.
Whoa.
So huge growth there. And that's very conservative. Some people are saying potentially more like 2 trillion. And the crazy thing is, like, a lot of people sort of say that, Gen Z and all that, they're all just spending all their time on TikTok on their phones and all this, right? But actually, they're leading the charge. They're the ones who are going out looking for more experiences outside of that digital realm. And they want to see, yes, they expect their money to go far, but they are the ones who are leading the charge and expecting significant more value and experiences and memories to be created from all of the events that they're going to. And I find that quite reassuring, because
me too.
I think in a world of AI and all these kinds of things where trust could be massively eroded, people going out and seeking more human to human experiences, I think that's only going to be an advantage for the industry overall, So yes, we do all the digital side of things here, but we should never be ignoring the physical. Should be both working together in tandem.
Yeah, that is reassuring to me too, that people are getting out there and having actual, I say my daughters are in their 20s and I say, did you talk to your sister today? And she'd say, yes. I said, I mean, talk, like we're talking now. No, I text it. So it's just the vernacular is just different, and yeah, having a real interaction with other humans in a public forum like that I think is really, really important. Scalping is an issue over here, right? The corporations are buying big amounts of tickets and then reselling them for a lot. My daughters recently, they were going to South Korea and they were going to buy tickets to a K-pop show. And there you have to show your passport. And once you have your passport, you could only buy one ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they deal with that there. Is it an issue there in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, it's been a massive issue over the years. And, we've seen tickets which would sell for £100, then being sold straight after for like £1,000,
Wow.
£1,500, for some things. So it has been a huge issue because they'll use scalping bots, which will completely crash all the ticket sites. So even if I was waiting online to buy the ticket, the scalp bots basically overrun the entire system, purchase it for all these people, and then basically those people are pretty much, well, I've got to go to these reseller sites. So there's actually some new regulation coming in the UK about that, essentially making it pretty much illegal to do that. So they're very much saying that, again, you kind of need some form of ID and things like that. One thing I'm not massively happy about, though, is surge pricing, as it were. So, kind of how Uber does it. If something gets busy,
right,
they add 10, 20, 30%. They're looking to do that for tickets. And I feel like that's potentially something which will, in some ways, kind of do a similar thing to scalping in some ways, because it's just going to price out the people who did want to buy in the first place, and it's like, for the events where surge pricing would be applied, those events are already going to be doing very, very well, right? And so it's, they're not surge pricing because no one wants a ticket. It's a surge pricing because many, many people want the tickets. So really, it's just a case of them just squeezing more profit out of it. And it's kind of like, I don't know whether that's fair or not, but it may be one way of helping to tackle the problem.
Once again, once money gets involved and then people are paid, it's hard to make laws that stop this. What social media? So social media affecting marketing, especially in the events industry. Now, there's big things happening there in UK where people are being jailed for saying things that are perceived to be one way in their social media. So how is that affecting what you do?
Yeah, so we've seen quite a few acts. For example, Glastonbury last year, there was quite a few acts which basically got shadow banned from the BBC because of the kind of things they were saying on social media and things like that, And there's a lot of kind of talk about Palestine, all those kinds of things,
Right.
And some of the bands were talking about that very openly. And it seems to kind of divide some people. And then others, it kind of, you on one side of the divide, you get people who are really resonate with it, and then other people who are like, no, I'm not going to tune into it at all. Social media is continuing to kind of be a driver of awareness, but I feel like with the level of AI kind of content that's being created these days and how realistic it can be. I mean, we've probably all seen a few AI videos now somewhere which we thought that was legitimate, and it's not. It's AI.
All the time. Yeah.
I've been duped a few times, and I work with AI every day, right? And I was like, wow, So I feel like, again, that kind of trust level is really going to impact social media over the next few years, more so than it is at the moment. And that will then be a problem, I feel, for music promoters, festivals, events, artists, speakers, all those types of people. I think it's going to be more of a challenge. And so building your community is going to be really key there, and not just relying on one platform for your reach is going to be really critical. Yeah, and what I'm seeing on the positive side of that is I'm seeing a lot more acts and artists and things actually doing that. They're actually like, no, we're not putting anything on Spotify anymore. If you want our stuff, then it's on our own website here, and you can go direct to us. And there's quite a big movement of that now, which I feel is positive in a lot of ways.
What has mountain biking taught you anything about business risk?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Firstly, sometimes you need to know when to put the brakes on. And then sometimes you need to know when to just roll down the hill and let it go, as it were,
Coast.
So, yeah, I find like with the mountain biking, I love it. I go out pretty regularly, 20, 30K. I usually go with one of my friends who loves it too.
Wow.
And I always get some real clarity around
Do you really?
that, massive clarity every single time. And I feel like that's kind of one of the things I've really learned over the years is that even in the most stressful times I've had, where, you feel like you're chewing glass for days and days or weeks at a time, going through something really challenging. And starting up my agency, I've definitely had my share of those. And what I've really learned is that when you feel like the pressure is on you on every side, that is the time to actually step away and actually go and decompress and go and do something completely different. And I found mountain biking has been a fantastic release for that. The way it kind of made me realize that the world didn't end because I took an afternoon out to go on the bike. The business is still there. Everything's still going along. And just appreciating that it's not all a grind every single day, and it shouldn't be, and it's something about having that kind of heart rate going up, going over bumpy ground and things like that, with the bike and stuff, taking the time out, not thinking about any of that type of stuff has actually been a huge benefactor to, my performance and productivity within my business as well.
Yeah, because you're getting off the grid a little bit, right? And you're forced to focus on what's ahead of you right away. And yeah, I could see how clarity shows up. That's really, really inspiring, Dan. How about, I don't know if it could be more opposite, but you do model painting. I mean, it's so delicate and so precise and so focused. Tell me how you got into that and how does that shape your leadership?
Yeah, so the model painting is fantastic because the miniatures it's very kind of cathartic, because you have to be very precise and particular about how you approach every single step. And oftentimes it requires many, many layers of just fine adjustments as you're going along to kind of get like the depth that you need. For example, you don't just have one kind of base color. You might have 5 or 6 layers which kind of add to each other and kind of give you the kind of the depth that you need.
Wow.
And I suppose that's something which is been very beneficial for me as well, is just kind of like, it's very meditative, for a start. It's very relaxing for the mind. But B, it's kind of like realizing that, you have to kind of look at things from multiple different angles, multiple different layers, and kind of realizing that it's just not one. I don't want to sound cheesy, but it's just not one shade of green, for example, that makes up the whole hue, So it's thinking about it like that is, again, it kind of gives me a lot of meditative, it clears my mind very much. So it kind of goes back to that clarity piece there. And attention to detail, I think, is important. But also realizing that you can often make mistakes and stuff along the way, right? And I might overthink those mistakes, but then like I show it to someone else and they just don't even see it. They go, wow,
Right.
They just see it and they go, that's incredible. And I'm like, what, you didn't see that one tiny little bit there? Like, no, I didn't see that at all until you pointed it out. So, sometimes good is better than perfect, and shipped is better than planned, as it were.
Yeah, amazing how your eye would go right to it. I've done many of these episodes over 800 at this point, and I think I've listened to maybe a half one, Dan. The sound of my voice, through, coming back at me, as a musician, I can't do it. I get chill, and videos. I do some kind of squinting thing. I can't watch. So I mean, I see this, but I know many others don't as well. And you're a father now. You mentioned before. I mean, how has that shaped things too? I mean, that's a significant change in your life. Now you've got this. It's much bigger than you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm a proud father of 2, 11 and 7, and when I couldn't do the late night events things anymore because my first daughter was coming along,
Yes.
I kind of knew I had to do something else. And I was working for a corporate agency, like I said at the time, but I was kind of going into burnout territory all the time. And I'd taken some time out from that. My daughter was on the way, and I'd taken about 4 weeks out due to burnout. And I realized that as soon as the thought of going back to that job was on the horizon for me, I started getting really stressed out, even panic attacks and everything, beforehand. And I'm like, I literally can't do this. I need to do something else.
Wow.
And so I decided to which is crazy, right? Because I had a daughter on the way and I had no job security. I decided to hand in my notice and just basically go out on the freelancing side of things. And I did that, and I basically hustled for a long time,
Wow.
and a lot of people have asked me what my drive was for that. And I'm like, well, the drive was I had a daughter who I cared for very deeply and needed to make sure that she thrived in every way possible. And although I don't really agree with the hustle culture long term, I think there is always a need for it if you're starting something up. And so, the 14, 16-hour days I used to do at the time did, I feel, kind of help build that character I needed to persevere, and I don't have to do cold calls or anything like that anymore, but I did at the time. I was doing everything I possibly could to make sure I gave the best opportunity for my daughter. And now I'm very happy to say that, they have a good life, fridge full of food, nice home, all these types of things. And I try and instill that kind of resilience into them and the belief in themselves that they should find the things that are important to them and focus on those and be willing to do what it takes to stand up for those things that matter to them. That kind of creates some very strong-willed children, I've got to say. Good. So I get quite a lot of pushback from it, but I personally, I'd rather have strong-willed children who push back.
Yes.
And they know I'm not a pushover, but I get pushback, and I do encourage that.
Yeah, it's amazing how it does shape you a bit. Just having children like that. Is there something that you believed in firmly 10, 15 years ago that you no longer believe now?
So that's a good one, that really. I used to kind of just generally believe that, well, I used to think being a father was easy, before I had
Who told you that?
Well, I don't know, but there might have been some crazy people somewhere along the way, But, I remember when I was growing up, we all go through that phase of kind of, my parents are the wisest people and they know everything. And then you go to the teenage era, they don't know anything at all. They're silly people. And then in your 20s, you realize they were right about a lot of things. Right. And then in your 30s, you're like, oh, they were right about almost everything. And in your 40s, you're lucky if you can still kind of, if they're still around and things like that. And so I just kind of realized that my daughter is potentially going into you're not right about anything, dad, kind of phase soon. And so I just need to understand that that's a phase. And, I'm just going to ride that out like all the other ones, build that resilience, be the scaffolding for them. And ultimately, I kind of feel like that belief is really where I used to be, was, my parents didn't know anything, and actually they were right about everything. So I think, even though they didn't have the same perspective, and so again, it goes back to that collaborative piece, understanding that I think even if you don't agree with someone, sometimes what they're saying can still be quite valid, or it can be a great learning, or it can be a different perspective and you can take something from it.
Yeah, it's very, very valuable to see that perspective. One of the main reasons why I like to talk to smart people like you. Is there a question, Dan, that you wished more people would ask you?
So I am a complete nerd. So I love it when people ask me any questions. But the problem is I can then just go completely, I bombard people with things, So I think something people, could ask a bit more about is really, talking about kind of what my purpose is, I feel like that's something where I do feel like a lot of conversations. I mean, this has been a great conversation. I've loved it. But, the day-to-day kind of conversations you have with some people, it can feel a little bit surface level sometimes. And I just relish going deep on subjects and topics with people, And so it's just not necessarily a single thing, but maybe ask like five, if you ask 5 whys in a go to someone, suddenly you're in very deep territory. And that's the kind of territory I like to explore a lot of the time. And so it's not necessarily a particular question, but just more if people just dig deeper into any of that kind of stuff, it could be quite rewarding for both parties, because I feel like I always learn something from those conversations myself. And, that's why I enjoy it. But the purpose, I feel, is quite a key one. And I don't think enough people ask about that.
Your approach, based on our conversation so far, Dan, I'm puzzled by this. Your approach to kind of problem solving and how, you're faced with an issue and how to solve it. I want to talk about art versus science, because you are an artist. You paint. You're a musician. You're into music, but you also are into, of course, marketing, which can be both as well. But so when you're faced with a problem, do you gather many facts and then trust your gut, or do you just trust your gut? What's your process? So art versus science question.
Yeah, it's a really great one, that. So I consider myself to be a little bit weird in that regard, because I spend a lot of my day, crunching data, numbers, working with algorithms, automation, science, all those kind of things, looking at formulas, modeling things. I do a lot of that within the business. And then the other side of things is kind of like producing, different kinds of creatives and all that type of stuff. And like you said, on the other side, I make music, I do audio engineering.
Yes.
And things like that as well.
Paint.
Yeah, painting and all these types of things. And so, I pretty good at kind of drawing and art and stuff like that as well. I always got good grades on that side of things. So I feel like oftentimes I have to kind of have the gut check first. So if something isn't working, I kind of have to look at it from a perspective of like, why do I feel it isn't working? And when I'm looking at it like that, why do I feel it isn't working, is often a kind of a little bit of a compass for me, so it can kind of show a little bit more about maybe the emotion behind something, like why do I want a specific answer. And I think sometimes the data, when you're looking on the scientific side of things, it can be very easy to manipulate data in a way that gives you the answer that you want. Like if you give me a spreadsheet with all marketing data, I can easily kind of like
draw your own
change
conclusion.
how it's presented to a client or anyone. Like, not that we do that, but it's very easy to just kind of be like, I could just do the formula like that. And then we go, oh, well, this is great. So I kind of have to often look at things a little bit more like, why do I want it to tell a particular story first? And that definitely comes from the creative side of things, is the questioning why. And then when I kind of realize, again, if I ask those 4 or 5 whys into something, it can often lead me to an actual answer that sometimes I don't want to hear, about kind of the analytical side of things. And I find that kind of unlocks a little bit more of a creative angle on the solution as well, because I'm like, right, okay. So because I've dived deep onto this, I understood that I wanted it to tell a specific narrative, which it isn't telling. Now I kind of understand the reasons why it's not actually telling the narrative I want. How can I approach this more creatively to solve that problem now? And oftentimes it's a case of just testing and experimenting outside of the data. So it's I'm a little bit left brain, right brained in that regard. It's a bit hard to kind of like split the two, but I feel like I have to look at the emotional reason why I want an answer sometimes, and then humble myself when I don't get the answer I want.
So do you rely, we're talking more about business here, but do you often, or do you frequently look at your gut and say, what's my gut tell me about this? Here's what the numbers tell me. What's my gut tell me?
Yeah, so absolutely. I do believe that the gut is very powerful
Yeah.
signal, but
Yeah.
I also am very aware that, through all the fitness and everything like that, all these kinds of things, I've learned so much about my thought process in my body and how I respond to stuff, that I do also know that, the gut can be a great signal, but the way the brain works can be quite funny. And sometimes
Mm.
you can be getting a signal and interpreting it wrong. So you go like, this feels like it's wrong because of X, Y, and Z. And then when you actually dive a bit deeper, you realize it feels wrong because you're just scared of it being
Mm.
right, sort of
Mm.
thing. So the gut is a great signal to something is happening here and you need to make some kind of decision either way. But it's important to understand how that signal is being interpreted,
Hmm.
I feel.
Hmm. So I started my business back in the 90s, Dan, and I was working way too hard and a lot of late nights like yourself and not paying attention to my physical well-being. And I'm in front of the doctor and she tells me I'm at 340 pounds. I believe that's about 150 kilograms.
Yeah.
And she says, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So just like you were, you were faced with this, I've got to make changes in my lifestyle. Now it's more about my health. I'm not going to be around. I can abuse myself all I want, but I'm not, I need to take care of myself. So I spent the next 6-7 months, lost about 130 pounds, about 60
Yeah.
kilos,
Amazing.
and kept it off. So you can't look at it as as a finishing line, right? These are lifelong changes. And when I ask people, or when I tell people this, they always say, what's your secret? And I always say discipline, right? It's just focus, right? Routine, all part of discipline. How does discipline play a role in your life, Dan Charles?
Massively. Yeah. So, I completely hear that. And that's amazing, by the way. That's so great to hear. That's an awesome achievement. Discipline, I think it kind of goes back to kind of like, really understanding that, without kind of sounding cheesy, discipline does equal freedom a lot of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time for
yeah.
me. And what I know is that when I go to the gym several times a week, when I kind of eat right, when I get enough sleep, when I do those, like get out in nature, all these kinds of things, when I do those sorts of things on a regular basis, when I just show up every day to work, even when I don't want to, I build resilience. And that could be mental resilience, it could be physical resilience, or it could be kind of like, well-being resilience. And what I see is that kind of compounding over the long term. And it ultimately gives me more freedom because I have more of a choice on how I approach every step of my life. And, I know, for example, that discipline has kind of built a lot of for example, I'm 44. My metabolic physical age was currently rated at 28 years old.
Wow.
Right. And that's from 6-7 years of being highly disciplined with going training and eating right and sleeping right and so forth. So that's like added well over a decade onto my
Amazing.
longevity from that. And that's only compounded over a long period of time, and what I believe is that discipline is built just one step at a time.
Hmm.
Motivation kind of comes and goes, as it were. And that's so true, and there's definitely days where I haven't wanted to do X, Y, and Z for
Yeah.
whatever reason. We've all been there. But really focusing on that discipline is the kind of thing which is built up to me looking back on things which were hard things, like 5 years ago, for example. And I'd be like, that would have completely stopped me for an entire week. And now I'm like, I look back and I appreciate myself for building that kind of discipline there, to be like, that would have completely derailed my entire week. And now it's not even a blip. It's not even a blip on my radar anymore,
Right.
And that is really from just kind of doing sometimes the things you don't want to do, ultimately, on a very regular basis. And, I love working out now and stuff, but it's not for everyone, but it can change your life. So.
Was discipline discussed as a child in the household? Was it exemplified? Was it how was it treated?
So that's quite a funny one, really, because it wasn't.
Because your father's
It
a
was.
musician, right?
So we're always into music and things like
Yeah.
that, but like they weren't necessarily like musicians and things. I mean, you know, they were quite free living, quite free loving, parents and stuff like that, quite chill. Um, they had their brand of discipline, as it were, but it wasn't really the same as that mental mindset of discipline. What I do know is that they did still embody that quite a lot, even if they didn't talk about it as much.
Right. As
Like
exemplified.
my dad, for example, he had his own kind of health business, and he went through all sorts of challenges with that. He had many more kids than I do. I'm one of 8 in
Wow.
total, 7 sisters. Yeah.
Whoa.
So yeah. So he had quite a lot more weight on
Oh
his
my
shoulders in that
goodness.
respect. I know, right? That might be why I'm quite so chilled out as well these days.
8 women and 2 men in the house. That's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, but he kind of had a lot of weight on his shoulders, and he knew that he had to just show up every day and kind of do the things that he didn't want to do. And so I kind of embodied some of that, even though he didn't talk about him needing to do that every day. He did that. And so subconsciously, I feel like I definitely picked up some of that from him over my childhood.
Yeah, my father was an Italian immigrant, and when I go there, it's a big shift because generally in Europe we don't really talk about what you do for a living because they kind of just work to get by and they don't really identify themselves as that. Whereas here in the States, it's generally the first thing we ask. It's just, I don't know which way is better. It doesn't matter, but it's just different there. And so I find that, when I asked that question was about discipline in the household as a child, usually it's a similar answer to yours because parents didn't identify by their careers, more like, their hobbies and what they loved. That's what they really showed their passion in. It's a different shift. Seems to me a healthier shift, by the way, but who am I to say? But it's just different. Is there anything in the last month or so, Dan, that you changed your mind on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I changed my mind a bit on how I really present myself to, when it comes to kind of like the business, for example. I used to feel like it should never be about me as a kind of a personal brand. I felt like I was kind of growing the business and wanted it to just be all about Codarity, all about the agency, and I
Yeah.
should just be kind of out the sidelines there. And not from any kind of level of ego. I realized that, well, I am the business's number one ambassador. I am the ultimate ambassador of the business. And I feel like by hiding behind the business, as it were, like I used to do, like years ago, I was kind of like doing both myself and the business a disservice.
Interesting.
And so I've really started to lean much more on kind of like my personal brand, as it were, and looking to build that up, because I feel like generally I have a lot of value and knowledge and insights and skills and things that I can share with the world. And sharing it through a brand can often be ignored. It can often be seen more as noise, rather than value. So I know that if something I'm delivering has value to it, then it should be me delivering that value. So that's kind of something I've kind of, not necessarily in the last month, but in the last 6 months or so, 3-6 months, I've really seen that shift. And it feels very positive as a result. I get a lot more interaction with people, and I love what you specifically said about X, Y, and Z. Even if my business had said it 100 times before, it's different when I say it. So, yeah.
People like to do business with people they like, so, this kind of long form conversation that we're having today, you really, discover, Dan's a good guy. He's level headed. He's a family man. He's got these hobbies and he loves what he does. And so, yeah, it's an interesting transformation. I've struggled with that myself in my consulting business, right? Do I take myself out? Do I put myself in? And yeah, well, what's the boundary there? It's very tough. What motivates you, Dan?
So a few things. I mean, my children are a massive motivator for me. I love to see them grow and thrive and turn into awesome little humans. I find that's I'm sure I'm not the first person who's said that in the world, but they are a big part of my why.
Yeah.
And I really do get lit up by helping people. And when they take that on board and then they apply it and then they get a result from that. And like, for example, my wife, she's very fit and active, and she's been great. She's a very active job. And she's kind of more recently been going to the gym with me. And so I've been coaching her up on that. And I love that kind of stuff, because she says, like, I feel like I would have just done it like this or that or that. And I said, like, yeah, you may actually have even injured yourself if you did it like that, So she said, like, the advice and the skills and things that you're sharing with me right now feels like I am shortcutting years of learning curve here. And she's kind of getting, amazing results from all of that kind of work and things that I'm able to impart on her. So things like that are just absolutely a massive driver for me, just hey, I learned about this thing, who wants to learn about it? And then seeing them kind of take it forward and thrive from there is just very motivating for me.
Yeah, rewarding. So given your motivation of your family legacy and impact, I hear impact, although you didn't say that. Well, how do you measure success?
So it's funny, I used to measure success years ago when I was kind of growing the agency. It was like it had to be on this arbitrary revenue number, right?
Right.
And now I just realize that doesn't mean jack. No one cares about that. I don't actually really care about that. My success is measured on, do I get to go to my kids' school plays whenever I want? Do I get to just take a random afternoon off and go for a bike ride whenever I want? Do I have we just moved into a nice, lovely new house recently, which is a lot more expensive than the old one, and we got like a beautiful garden with I've got a miniature forest just at the end of the garden there, that's kind of success for me. And that level is like those kind of things which enrich your life every day. Do I get that freedom of choice? I think is really success. And sure, bank accounts and all those kind of things, that's stuff you can measure a certain level of status on, but it is really knowing that, yes, I can go to my kids' school play. Yes, I can kind of, chill in my garden and watch the nature tweeting around in the trees and things like that. That's the kind of stuff which I benefit from every day. And that's what makes me feel, I suppose, spiritually successful.
The difference between spirituality and religion is for you?
Well, my family, when I grew up, they were very kind of more on the spiritual side, not necessarily on the religious side of things. So I kind of like lean a bit more to that side of things as well myself. My wife's side, they're a bit more on the religious side, so I kind of see the benefits from both. But being completely honest, I feel like all of it is really just an amalgamation of people wanting to do right in the world, and I feel like, for example, no one can really explain who or what God is. And, so when you look at it like that, it's like, it's totally plausible that he could be from another realm altogether, sort of thing, So I feel like there's quite an overlap there on both sides. Like, for example, if God created the earth and God created all of the elements and everything in that earth, and he created things like different kind of compounds and things like that, which allow people to have what would be defined as a spiritual experience on earth, so it's kind of like, I feel like they're two and the same in a lot of ways.
Do you meditate or journal?
I do. I practice gratitude every day. So I just kind of have like a nice little gratitude journal. I actually have an app which is great for that, and I add to it every day. Sometimes I have pictures and things, but I think it was, last time I checked, it was about 730 entries, something like that on there. And it's fantastic because sometimes I might be feeling like something's really rubbish in my day, and then I just go, right, I'm just going to load the app and I'm just going to hit a random day, and then it will just remind me of something maybe from May 2021 on the 30th of May or something, and I said this, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a very cool thing. So I do practice gratitude and things on a daily, and it's been very impactful for me.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypinz.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Yeah, it does help. Again, it gives you time to, be with yourself a bit. Dan, I really, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much today. If anybody watching or listening, they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've really enjoyed the conversation today as well. It's been fantastic. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place where I put out a lot of my content. So you just go LinkedIn/Dan Charles and you'll find all my information there. Feel free to connect with me, hit me up, ask me any questions. And you can check out my business website, which is codarity.com. That's CODARITY.com. We have, if you are in the event space, we have a free growth scorecard, which is interactive, and people can jump in there and they can answer a bunch of questions. It takes about 3 minutes, and they'll get a live interactive scorecard, which kind of tells them all the ways it can maybe kind of adjust things or pull different levers to improve their business outcomes and so forth as well. And you can find us Codarity across most other social media, but LinkedIn and the website are definitely the top 2 points.
Fantastic, Dan. Next time I'm in you're in Reading.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
In England, perhaps we'll get together and have a cup of tea. Thank you so much for your time today, my friend.
Thank you, Joey. It's been great. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with 1 or 2 of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypinz.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.